Friends, today we're going to talk about a true story that will leave you stunned. This is the story of Poon Lim, a man who was stranded alone in the middle of the ocean for 133 days stat almost 5 months, still managed to return alive. Auchiav 55 people. Only one man survived, and that was Poon Lim. He overcame hunger, thirst, scorching sun, freezing cold, and terrifying storms, defeating death itself to return to land. So, let's dive into this astonishing true story. This story begins with an ordinary young man who never dreamed of making headlines. His name was Poon Lim. He grew up in a small village on Hainan Island, China, in a very poor family. His parents struggled to make ends meet. He had to drop out of school and to support his family, he joined the British Merchant Navy. The year was 1942, at the height of the Second World War. Poon Lim was assigned to the SS Bent, a merchant ship traveling from Cape Town, South Africa, to Suriname in South America. There were 55 people on board, mostly young and experienced sailors. On November 16, 1942, it was a calm afternoon at sea. But no one knew that death was lurking in the depths. Suddenly, a German U-boat torpedoed the ship. There was a massive explosion, and the SS Ben Lomond broke into and sank within minutes. Chaos erupted. Drowning men and screams filled the air as everyone fought for their lives. Poon Lim jumped from the ship. Luck was on his side. He found a life jacket that kept him afloat. He survived, but all his shipmates either burned to death or were lost to the depths of the ocean forever. For about 2 hours, Poon Lim floated alone in the sea. His body was exhausted, but his will to live remained strong. Then, in the distance, he spotted a wooden raft that had likely fallen from the ship. Using his last ounce of strength, he swam to it and climbed aboard. Whatever was on that raft was now his entire world. 2 small cooking pots, a broken flashlight, a few bars of chocolate, some sugar cubes, a few bottles of fresh water, and a flare gun to signal for help. Peeing, shivering from the cold, Poon Lim held on to a flicker of hope. He did what his mother had taught him in childhood. He prayed. From that day on, his real battle began. 1 man, 1 wooden raft, and a 133-day war between life and death in the middle of the ocean. Alone on the raft, Poon Lim looked at the sky and wondered, will anyone come to save me? Will I see a ship? But during World War II, a rescue mission for a single sailor was impossible. Every nation was fighting for its own survival. Poon Lim soon understood that if he wanted to live, he would have to conquer the sea himself. The supplies on the raft dwindled. Within a few days, the food was gone and the water was running low. To survive, he had to get creative. He fashioned a system using his clothes to collect rainwater. It was never enough to quench his thirst, but every drop was a drop of hope. Using a nail from the raft and a rope, he made a small fishing hook. He would spend hours trying to catch a fish. When he finally caught one, he was so hungry he would eat it raw. Slowly, he learned that if he dried the fish in the sun, it was safer to eat. He also started catching seagulls that landed on his raft, drying their meat in the sun as well. His life became a constant struggle. One day, he cut his hand on a tin can. The blood dripped into the water, attracting 2 sharks that began circling and bumping the raft from below. Terrified but resolute, Poon Lim sat perfectly still until they eventually swam away. His body began to fail him. Hunger became so intense that he could barely open his eyes and his hands trembled. Storms would often wash away the fish he had saved. The scorching sun burned his skin during the day, while the freezing cold chilled him to the bone at night. His breathing grew heavy, but his determination remained unbroken. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. 20 days, 40 days, 80 days. Every day was a battle. Every breath, a victory. He endured violent storms that threatened to swallow his small raft. Sometimes he would fall into the water in his sleep. He started tying a rope from his waist to the raft so he would undrift away at night. It wasn't easy. Each struggle left him more exhausted, but he never gave up. That raft had become his world. Poon Lim was now just the skeleton of his former self, his eyes sunken, his lips cracked, yet a tiny spark of hope remained. Occasionally, he would spot large ships in the distance. He would stand up, scream, wave his arms, and fire his flare gun. But no one ever saw him. His small wooden raft blended in with the color of the water, making it nearly invisible from afar. Once, two large warships passed surprisingly close. Poon Lim used a flare and shouted with all his might, but they didn't respond. Shockingly, some sailors on the ship did see him but chose not to help. In the midst of a world war, they suspected it might be a trapa decoy to lure their ship into an ambush, so they ignored him and sailed on. He also saw American naval planes fly overhead. He waved, but they didn't understand. At one point, a plane dropped a marker buoy into the water, perhaps as a signal or a form of aid, but the massive waves quickly swept it away. Poon Lim started to think this was the end, that his body and his story would be lost to the sea. But he wasn't one to surrender. A few days later, as the sea calmed, sunlight penetrated deep into the water, and for the first time, Poon Lim saw the seabed. Shortly after, his raft bumped against something solid. He realized he was very close to land. Then came April 5th, 1943. After fighting for his life for 133 days, a group of Brazilian fishermen spotted a man lying unconscious on a raft. As they got closer, they saw he was still breathing. He was nothing but a skeleton. But he was alive. They immediately brought him to shore, gave him food and water, and took him to doctors. And that's when the world learned the incredible story of a man who survived 133 days alone at sea. Poon Lim spent about a month in a hospital in Brazil. The once ordinary sailor was now world. He was celebrated everywhere, received medals from several countries, and was honored for his incredible courage. Later in life, Poon Lim used his experience to train Navy officers and sailors on survival techniques at sea.